Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We'd like to call to order it's not a regular schedule. It's actually a special meeting of the Quality Life and Public Safety Committee meeting. My name is Councilman TJ Clark. I serve as the co-chair for the committee, as well as the majority leader for the city council. We are streaming live from HPA-TV.org, channel 96 on Comcast, and channel 6032 on Frontier. And we have joining us tonight is Councilman John Gale, who is a committee member, Councilwoman Tiana Hercules. We have Captain Jeff Russo, our Chief of Police, Jason Thody, our Chief of Fire, Rodney Barco, and Sergeant Mastriani from our C4 Command Center, and our member of our Corporation Council, Attorney Natalie Fioli-Guerreri. So thank you for joining us, and we are going to go as scheduled on our agenda. We don't have Director Sue Webster here, so we'll go with presentation from Chief of Fire, Rodney Barco.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And Happy New Year.
Yes, I forgot. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Share my screen. Can you all see that? Okay. General updates for fire. We provided fire safety information for 2,615 adults, 471 children, and installed 56 smoke detectors, 6 carbon monoxide detectors. And for the month of December, we relocated, relocated 27 people, which included 19 adults and 8 children. All that is achieved through our Special Services Division, which we only have 3 individuals currently. Actually, we only have 2 individuals currently serving in that division. And we have some detail folks from our Suppression Division who occasionally take that assignment for about a 6-month period of time. But as I stressed in other quality of life public life safety meetings, it is a lot of work for just 3 people when we're fully staffed. We have been seeking to get more individuals to serve in that division. Community engagement, again, our Special Services Division attended 14 community meetings. That's our NRZs, Commission on Disabilities, Faith-Based Initiatives, and Know Thy Neighbor, to name a few. We're currently field testing some new equipment for our firefighters. That includes battery-powered operated saws, or a vent saw, as we call it. We're moving toward that direction because when we do get a structure fire and we try to vent a roof, because of the smoke and combustible gases coming out, our gasoline power saws sometimes choke up. So we field tested a few battery power saws. We already have battery power extrication tools on our apparatuses, and those have been working out great for us. So we're in the process with several committees of testing out several different models of battery power saws, testing new hoses for our pumpers, the new type of hoses that has hit the market. They're actually lighter than what our current complement is and last longer. So those wear tests in the field, we're going to begin to equip 1 or 2 companies with whatever the committee selects. Uniforms, shirts, pants, and shoes. Sometimes we run into an issue where our vendor does not have the proper size for some of our members, so we're trying to branch out and give a wider selection of sizes for our members. And last but not least is our structural firefighter PPE. That's gloves, hoods, pants. We're field testing newer versions of what we currently have that's supposed to be a lot lighter and more flexible. Events, we had the captain of training promotional exam take place today, along with the fire captain test that was held at Parkus Memorial. That was a success. We're currently waiting on the results, and then we'll have our assessment center and hopefully make some promotions to a bunch of a good group of captains that's currently on that list. So here's our fire stat data for the month of September. As you can see, our citywide response, we're currently at 80% of the 90th percentile range throughout the city in terms of fire response. EMS response, there's a slight declination in our response time that could be contributed to a number of factors: wrong address, improper description, or maybe the company that was sent on that individual run was not in the same district as the call was generated from. Here's our emergency response data. As you can see, incidents by day of the week and hour. Again, I think I've explained this slide. There's really no rhyme or reason to how incidents are generated on a daily basis and the time of day that they come in. Although there is some data that suggests that the weekends after 12 a.m., we do receive slightly higher calls for service in terms of food on the stove and things of that nature. But you can see 321 EMS call excluding vehicle accident with injury is our highest count in terms of calls for service with 863. Incidents by neighborhood for the month of December. Again, you can see Asylum Hill, Berry Square, and Frog Hollow had the most calls for service. For the month of December, there was a total of 2,585 calls for service. EMS calls for the month of December, again, you can see by the numbers in these slides, Asylum Hill, Frog Hollow, Northeast, and Berry Square had the most calls for service. Again, motor vehicle accidents with injuries with 863. Narcan administered, this is actually the number of Narcan administered for the month of November. Our December data was a little skewed, so our IT guys are taking the time to sort through that data, and we'll get that to you as soon as I get it. Rescue calls for the month of December, we had a total of 32 calls for service. Asylum Hill, Berry Square, Frog Hollow was the highest number of calls, with lockouts being 13 for the month of December. So these are all fires in the month of December. We had a total of 35 calls for service as it pertains to fire. Asylum Hill, Northeast, and I believe it was Parkville had the most calls for service. And these are the fires in relation to the fire stations located throughout the city. You can see there were a total of 9. Engine 2 had one. Between Engine 7 and 14, which is the north end, they had 5 calls for service. So for the month of December, they seen the most fire duty. And again, these are our total number of members, 353 out of 361, although that number has slightly declined. In the last month, we did have some retirements. And then the total number of Hartford residents has declined maybe by 1 or 2 members. But we're still, in terms of diversity, pretty even across the board with 31% Black, 33% white, and 35% Hispanic. And that's all I have, sir. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. I did want to ask, when is the captain's test? You had two on there, a captain's exam and a captain for training. So when are those going to take place?
Yes, sir. Those took place today at Parker Memorial.
Okay.
The captain of training took place at 8 o'clock, and the captain, the fire captain took place at 1300 today.
And how will those tests evaluated and scored? Is there an independent organization that scores those tests?
Yes, sir. We use an outside organization. Oh, well, HR does. It's a Morrison McDaniel, they have a long history with administering public safety tests for, I'm not sure for PD, but they do a lot of testing for fire departments across the country.
Okay. And I'm just curious, what types of questions are asked on those exams?
Anything from the books that they use to study building construction, fire officer 1 and 2, a lot of our department SOPs, which we have a ton of, and then some EMS questions. It's all relevant to the job functionality.
Gotcha. And since I noticed that you've had some recent retirements, is there additional retirements that you might be planning for?
Yes, sir. We can expect about, we have around somewhere from 20 to 25 folks that have their time in. So we can be looking at anywhere from today until next year for the individuals to decide if they want to continue their career or retire. We will be putting in a request for another recruit class for sometime in the summer.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. So thank you for answering that for me already. All right, any questions from my colleagues?
And one other thing, sir, I would like to mention is I did make another promotion today for Lenitra's Terry.
Oh, yes, I saw.
Yeah, she's 5 years and 7 months on the job, and she got promoted to Special Services Lieutenant today.
Congratulations. Yeah,
Yep.
that was a good good promotion.
Thank you.
Yeah, well deserved. Okay, seeing that there are no other questions from my colleagues, thank you, sir. I appreciate your presentation. Next, we'll have our Chief of Police, Jason C. Thody.
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Happy New Year.
You too. You too. I think I'm sharing the screen here, right?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. So this one, this presentation, we're going to just look a little bit at kind of end of year stuff. Most of those stats are kind of rolling in, and some of these reports are rolling in, and they're some of them have got some good info here. So this is kind of the end of the year CompStat report. The blue line on the bottom is total. Toward the bottom, kind of a third of the way up from the bottom, that blue line that says total is our Part 1 crimes for the year. I don't know that I've ever seen this before, but they are within 3, which is a 0% change. That's pretty amazing that the numbers bore out that way. Certain crime categories are obviously up and down compared to last year, but the total numbers are a 0% change from 21 to 22. Aggravated assault down 4%, aggravated assault with a firearm down 23%, rape down 29%, robbery and robbery with a firearm both up 43 and 28% respectively. Auto theft down 21%. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And burglary up 38%. Larceny about even, up 1%. There's only a few larcenies that differentiate 2021 from 2022. And then, as we know, homicides up from 34 to 39. That's a 15% increase. And then shooting victims down 10%. So kind of a mixed bag, and as we look at the CompStat packages going forward, the first couple of weeks of January, those robbery and burglary trends are continuing in the wrong direction. So we've had a significant focus on that. Made some major crimes, and patrol has made some significant arrests in those areas, and those are one person tends to be responsible for a large number of incidents type crime. So we're hoping that will have an impact, but we'll be watching that as we move forward. This is the end of the year homicide and shooting totals. As you can see, when you combine homicides and shootings for the year, 2020 was a particularly high year. 2021 and 2022 about the same in the middle, and 2019 the baseline was a little bit lower. So we ended up kind of right in the middle of that mix. Just homicides alone, as we know, 2022 was a high year with 39. 2021, and then 2020 and 2019 had about the same. And we'll go into some of that in a little bit more detail as we move forward. This is just a spatial kind of analysis of that, where the non-fatal shootings and the homicides are landing in the city. It's generally spread out, but most of the concentrations are areas that have been concentrations for a long time. Of note, still 35% of our violent crime is driven by personal disputes. That is a bit of a shift, as we've talked in public safety meetings in the past. Again, a little more on that when we do the 2022 violent crime analysis, which we're wrapping up now. Same kind of look that we've done in years past, and in the 5-year and 3-year look backs that Professor Barrow did. We did one of those for 2022 as well, and we're just putting the finishing touches on that. That'll be ready for the next meeting. This is year to date. Non-fatal shootings, we've had 3. Homicides, we've had 1, and 50% of those are personal disputes, and 50% are unknown. So those gaps will be filled in as these investigations move forward. It's kind of unremarkable data when you're only talking about 2 weeks, but this is where we are in 2 weeks. Homicide arrests for 2022. We have 12 arrests for the year for 2022, 5 additional cold case arrests, and then 15 total HPD or major crimes arrests. The reason that number is different is that of those cold case arrests, 2 were made by the state's attorney's office or non-HPD arrests. And then we have 2 active arrest warrants for 2022 homicides that'll bring the total number up to 17. And those numbers will obviously increase as the year goes on. Last year we had about a 63%, I believe, clearance rate. And we're looking, last few years we've been between that 60 and 72, 73% clearance rate. We're looking at about the same for 2022 based on what we know in these investigations. They just take some time to put together. Non-fatal arrests for 2022, 38, 8 active warrants, and 3 warrants at court pending approval. Again, those numbers are really good. Last year and this year with the grant for the non-fatal shooting team, in years past, those numbers were 9, 10, 8. So real good strides there. Gun seizures. This is kind of something that we've been kind of harping on all year for 2022. We had 367. So this is one of the kind of year-end reports that we've got a lot of data on, and that the report is Sergeant Mastriani has put it together. He's on as well, so he can jump in if he has anything to add. But 367 is a pretty remarkable number for us. 325 pistols, 18 revolvers, 11 rifles, 7 shotguns, 6 total assault weapons, and 58 ghost guns, which is the most we've ever seen. So far, year to date, 2 weeks, we have 14 guns, 1 of which is a ghost gun. This is kind of a better look at it year over year, just to give you an idea of how significant this year and even last year was. As we look over the past few years, this dates back to 2013, which is 260. We reached 272 in 2019, but I mean, last year 341, this year 367. The work of the officers to get guns off the streets has been really remarkable. This is a breakdown of how we have, where the guns basically have been seized or how they've been seized. As you can see, we've seized 112 or 30%, just over 30% of those guns from someone's person, and 28, a little over 28% from motor vehicle stops. So these are mobile guns that are either on people or in cars. These are the guns that are moving around the city and that are being used for shots fired, shootings, and homicides. So it's great that this is where they're getting the majority of these guns from. 19.6, almost 20% from search warrants in houses. 5.7% of them came from crime scenes where they were found at a scene. Found guns at 17 or 4.6, and then guns turned in 4.1, and it goes down from there. But that's kind of where our guns come from. Those on person and motor vehicles are the guns that are going to have impacts on the immediate violence in the city, and then getting the ones in the search warrant. Also, if we have a search warrant, there's obviously a nexus to a crime, so those guns are important to us as well. Whether the associated arrests were firearms arrests were associated with an arrest, so 77.6% of the time in last year in 2022 that we seized a gun, it was associated with an arrest. And another interesting stat of those arrests, 49.1% of those individuals were convicted felons. So these are individuals that are convicted felons in possession of a firearm. Just some data. I know people have asked this before. We've never tracked this as well as Chris is tracking it now, but this is where the guns are coming from. So these are stolen firearms. These are the states where stolen firearms come from. Not really anything crazy here. 37 of them came from Connecticut. As you look up, we've got and in Connecticut, Hartford obviously is the most, and then Manchester, Windsor Locks, South Windsor. These are these surrounding towns that we have relationships with in the Greater Hartford Auto Theft Task Force that we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But this is basically where your stolen guns are coming from. 2 from Florida, 3 from Georgia. Now moving on to where the guns are purchased. Obviously we can do E-Trace. We have E-Trace data. When we collect these, when we get these guns, we can find out where the guns originated, where the original purchase was. This is a little bit more interesting, with 16 from Florida, 16 from Georgia, North Carolina, Vermont, New Hampshire, obviously up there. This is where kind of we worry about straw purchases, where people are potentially buying these guns in these other states. Legal possessors of firearms are buying them and then somehow selling them or trading them to folks where they end up in Hartford. Most of the time, as you saw from the stats, involved in some level of crime. They're either on a person in a criminal way, or in a car in a criminal way, or being seized from a search warrant from somebody's house that's involved in criminal activity. So this is kind of a map of where our guns come from. I know that question's been asked before. Chris did a nice job of tracking that this year. Our narcotics activity, as we can see, our fentanyl, 69,000, almost just shy of 70,000 bags of fentanyl this year, compared to just shy of 40,000 bags last year and only 16,000 bags in 2020. That's a 75% increase from 21 to 22. Fentanyl in grams, 165% increase over 2021 into 2022. Crack numbers, 2,441 grams, which is just about almost twice what we had in 2021. Cocaine, significant increase, 484% increase over 2021. And we're talking about a 37% increase overall in our search warrant activity for narcotics. As we knew, kind of in 2021, we started looking at drugs being the source of our violence. This year, we've kind of switched a little bit to personal disputes, but last year it was driven by drug activity. With our increase in proactive drug enforcement, we saw our drug-related shootings decrease by 29% in 2022 compared to 19 and 2021, which is a big number. and it shows that our folks are focusing in the right areas. This is so far year to date in 2023. Those numbers are again only up after a couple weeks. Our Greater Hartford Regional Auto Theft Task Force, which is headed up by Captain Russo, who's on the Zoom here. We were able to do our 1 year kind of look back as to what this auto theft task force has meant to both us and the towns and cities that surround us. And this is a very telling report about the success of that team. So we'll go over that a little bit. And this corresponds directly with the with the request, the resolution requesting to receive the monies from the state. So this presentation will basically be my presentation about that resolution. This has worked so well that the state police and OPM and the state has decided to fund these types of activities. In this case, they're going to give us $94,444. I don't know where they came up with that number, for us to continue this effort, and that money will go to overtime for our members of the unit. These other towns are also getting their own individual grants of money, but that $94,000 will just be for us. So they recovered 345 stolen vehicles in the 1 year period so far that they've been in operation. They've actually been in operation for just over a year, but we did the first year kind of look back. They've made 144 auto theft arrests. They've served 90 warrants, 35 other arrests, and they've recovered 42 firearms just for the auto theft task force alone. Of these vehicles, 65% of those vehicles 35% of those vehicles were associated with an arrest, 65% were recovered without an arrest. And then our juvenile numbers, 19 involved juvenile arrests, 81% did not. These are our recoveries and the town in which the auto theft occurred, 78 in Hartford, 35 in Manchester, 26 in East Hartford, and as you can see, it kind of goes on down the line. All but 2 of those towns, New Britain and Newington, are members of our task force. And so this is basically where the auto theft happened. Now, this is kind of interesting as we go to the next slide. So this is where the car was stolen. This is where the car was recovered. As you can see, Hartford with 203, that's a huge jump. And this is kind of this kind of reinforces the reason that this task force is so important. These cars are being stolen out of town, but they're being brought into Hartford and used in crimes, violent crimes and other crimes here in Hartford, with 203 of those cars being recovered here. What did it mean for everybody? So the 1 year period before the auto theft task force was in play versus the 1 year period after the auto theft task force was in play, you can see the reductions: 15% down in Hartford, 30% down in East Hartford, 35% down in West Hartford, Glastonbury down 71%, 65 to 19, Bloomfield down 48, Manchester down 62, Southington down 38, and for some strange reason, Bristol went up by 10%, but I don't have a good explanation for that. Collectively, that's a 25% decrease in these towns that were involved in the auto theft task force. And as I said, those are the cars that are used in crimes in Hartford. So that is a great success, I think. These are occupied stolen motor vehicle arrests. We looked at these, kind of in some of those stats before, but year to date, we got 5. We had 132 last year occupied arrests and versus 112 in 2021. 188 in 2020 and 76 in 2019. These are our traffic statistics as we show. Again, kind of unremarkable because we're only 2 weeks into the new year, really. But as you can see, 244 total stops. Traffic division is responsible for 131 of those, 120 infractions, 94 of which came out of the traffic division. We haven't done a speeding checkpoint yet this year. 5 for cell phone, 5 for cell phone, 10 for seatbelt, 22 for stop sign, and 78 for traffic control signal. We have a class graduating on the 26th. at 5 p.m. at 159 High Street. The class is 72% racial and ethnic minority, 16% women, 5% Hartford resident, and the average age is 29 years old. They will then, after graduating on the 26th, they will complete a 3-month field training program, and then they'll be out there on the streets. So we're happy to see them graduate, and they're very much needed. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. The graduation, 159 High Street, that's where's exactly that location?
That is that foot guard building that's right over the little bridge. If you go from the public safety complex over 84, essentially, it's that first building there on the right, that hall. It's worked out very well for us in the past.
Gotcha. How hard was it to recruit the 5% of Hartford residents?
So we had one additional. We started the academy with 4 more than that. We lost 4 during the academy, which happens. People fail things from academics to firearms. A lot of those we try to get kind of back. We had 2 Hartford residents. Hartford residents in recruitment has always been a challenge. We've had classes with none, so we've seen some increase in that area. But it is tough to get Hartford residents that are, interested in the job and that get through the process. As you know, from other presentations, our focus in recruitment is a lot on that, where we take care of getting them, through the physical agility with no cost versus the 75% chip card, the $75 chip card. They do get points at the onset of testing for residency. So, there's a lot of incentives there. Our recruitment efforts and all of the workshops and things that we do are really geared towards Hartford residents, but that's not to say that it's not a challenge. We've seen classes certainly with better representation than that, but we've seen it with worse as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from my colleagues on the Chief's presentation? Councilman Gill?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Chief. And Happy New Year. Fentanyl and cocaine, looking at those numbers, I'm just wondering if the dramatic increase in the amount taken off the street represents that much more usage by folks in Hartford, or better enforcement by HPD, or a combination, or do you know?
I think it's a combination. it's hard to pin that down, but if you looked at the stats on how many search warrants we've done, we've done almost 3 times as many search warrants this past year in 2022 than we did in 2020, and we did more in 2022 than we did in 2021. So I think there's some correlation to the amount seized, and Chris can talk to this a little more because he is literally one of our experts in it, but you don't even see heroin on there anymore. I think we've seized virtually no heroin this year. Chris, is that correct?
Yeah, 2 years, 21 and 2022 was no heroin at all fentanyl now.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Some of those numbers that we've seen in the past where you would see heroin numbers have now been completely supplanted with fentanyl. And you have to remember too, that fentanyl is not just used in the same way that heroin is. It comes in pill, they press it into pills. They've laced crack cocaine with it. Fentanyl is almost like a, it's been used with other drugs. So that's, I think, but it doesn't change the fact that there's just a lot more of it out there. We've seen the overdose deaths from fentanyl increase over the years. I believe we were almost exactly the same from 2022 to 2021 in OD deaths. I can get those stats, but it was very close. But the difference between the OD deaths in 2021 to 2020, they did increase substantially, and then again from 2019 to 2020 as well. So I think there's more drugs out there, but I also think, as we saw the drugs driving the violence in 2021, we really double down our efforts on these search warrants and on cracking down on the drug stuff. So I think there's a correlation between both of the things you mentioned.
So it does sound like to some extent we're just kind of holding our own. We're not making a lot of progress, but we're hopefully not losing the game either.
I mean, I think if the stats show that we've reduced drug-related homicides by 29% and shootings by 29%, that's having an impact. I don't know that, it's having an impact on, the physical toll that fentanyl takes on the community, but certainly interrupting the violence is one of our priorities, and that seems to be effective.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from my colleagues for the chief? Once, twice, 3 times. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate your presentation. Next item on our agenda is item 4, a resolution by Council President Rosado to create and implement a comprehensive crime prevention strategy, which she is not here to present her resolution. So I will entertain a motion to postpone.
So move.
And a motion's been made by Councilman Gill, seconded by myself. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. This item is postponed to our next meeting. And our last item, Mayor Broner with the company resolution authorizing the city to accept funding to support Hartford's auto theft unit as a part of the Regional Auto Theft Task Force under the fiscal year 2023 American Rescue Plan Act, which is the Auto Theft and Violence Grant Program. And Chief, I assume the Captain Russo is here to do the presentation.
I mean, I think so. I can give the auto theft portion of the public safety presentation again, if you'd like me to.
It was very thorough.
I'll entertain a motion for that, but no, I purposely put all that auto theft related information in there to kind of support this. If there's any specific questions, or if Captain Russo, if you've got anything to add, he is truly the person that has put this together. He reaches out to the chiefs. He reaches out to the other departments. He's done a great job. But him and I collaborated to do that presentation. So hopefully it would support the resolution. But if there's any additional questions, we can entertain them.
How long, my apologies if you had mentioned this, how long is this task force going to be operating together?
So we took some money from the state originally when this started last year. Actually, it was the end of, I believe it was the end of 2021 that it actually started. It was October, Jeff?
Yes, October 4th, 2021 is when everything commenced.
Yeah, so the state police really couldn't support or hold up the full statewide auto theft task force, and they kind of, so we kind of put this together with our surrounding towns, and they provided us with some money that we had to spend relatively quickly. I think we had to spend it by January. So that was kind of brought all the departments together. We collaborated, spoke amongst ourselves. We thought it was successful, so we agreed to keep it going. Even though the money had been spent and we were going to fund it through the individual departments, it was still a problem. It was still an issue. So we did that. We got the commitment of all those towns to stay on board. And then the state came up with this money now. So my commitment to this is that as long as it is a need and as long as it is effective, we will continue to do it. And I see an opportunity potentially if auto theft, if we're able to quell the auto theft problem enough, that we might be able to use this same mentality to focus on other things, potentially fentanyl. We know that some of this criminal activity does not know city and town boundaries. And so I think this regional effort has been very successful. It has provided some of these towns that don't normally operate in a city like Hartford with a taste of kind of how we do things here. And I think it's that spirit of cooperation has worked well for a lot of reasons, for training, when these folks are then interacting with our residents in Bloomfield and Manchester, some of these officers have already interacted with our community here. So I think there's benefits in that. And then, as you can see, a lot of the numbers are not just driven by Hartford. A lot of these things involve crimes that happen in our surrounding towns. So I think that this mentality of regionalization provides a lot of positives. Frankly, these detectives are working out of some of them full time out of our vice and narcotics division, and it's a force multiplier. And when something happens in Glastonbury or Newington, if you watch the news, some of these issues, whether they're a shooting or a robbery or a car chase that hits a diner, that just happened in Bristol. These resources kind of can be allocated as a force multiplier for some of these towns that don't have that many officers. And we do see rewards here, as you saw in the reduction of auto theft here in Hartford and the ability to use those. So the long answer is as long as it's effective. And when we don't think we need it anymore, we will likely morph that same model to address the next most important crime issue.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding this resolution? All right, the chair entertain a motion.
Move to send it back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Motion's been made by Councilman Gale for a favorable recommendation back to council. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman LeBron. Any discussion on this item? Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. Any abstentions, any opposals? There is none. This item is passed out of this committee and back to council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you, gentlemen. Since there's no other business to discuss of this committee meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.